view, it was already in use. Number two, in some of the messages, they talk about needing to go to the high side computers, which is the classified system. So they clearly were knowing there was a line on what you could discuss in a chat like this versus classified system. Number three, there is a dispute over whether the term war plans is being exaggerated. And number four, look, I love the policy. It's well executed. You've got a thoughtful policy discussion going on, and we did what the Biden administration would not do, stop these people from harassing our shipping lanes and our boats and our Navy. So good on the Trump administration for reversing a bad policy.
All right, so Lance, let me show you, before you comment, let me tell you again, in case you didn't hear it, this is what Caroline Leavitt said. Jeffrey Goldberg's well known for his sensationalist spin. Here are the facts about the latest story. Number one, no war plans. Scott Jennings just said that were discussed. No classified material was sent through the thread. Number three, the White House counsel's office has provided guidance on a number of different platforms for President Trump's top official to communicate as safely and efficiently as possible. As the National Security Council stated, the White House is looking into how Goldberg's number was inadvertently added to the thread. I think that's a good idea. Thanks to the strong and decisive leadership of President Trump and everyone in the group, the Houthi strikes were successful and effective. Terrorists were killed, and that's what matters most to President Trump. Having said all that, Lance, this is still not a good thing that happened.
All right, let's rehearse what we know, Gene.
Yeah, go ahead.
We went through this before. The Trump administration is tearing apart the deep state.
Yes.
And so the last time he was in office, the first thing the intelligence community did, this is an intelligence community setup. This is a setup and a preloaded chat thread that was deliberately and intentionally back-channeled to the Atlantic because they all work as a deep state syndicate. Remember, they leaked stories to the New York Times under Comey. This is how they do it. They want the media to play gotcha and embarrass. Now, here's what they're doing. They're going to go for a scalp because what the deep state did was they went after Flynn. They set him up. Once they got his scalp, they began to have an unraveling. You start having people backing up from each other. Trump's team is a tight team. What we have to watch is that they don't start turning on each other. This is the nullification project. They were doing it with judicial activist judges. They're continuing on that front. Now they're going to go in the intelligence community to try to take down 1, 2, or 3 of Trump's appointed people and see if they can dismantle the agencies. Our people have to see this for what it is.
Yep.
Don't look at the news cycle about, a mistake. Look at it like warfare inside the government trying to take down Trump.
Yes, and this may seem, and I'm glad you brought up General Flynn because it was about the same amount of time after he was in office when this happened again. So let's take a flashback talking about Jeffrey Goldberg. Let's tell the stories. Let's go back in time. I'm going to give this to Rick Green here when we come back. Look.
Jeffrey Goldberg, based on accounts from anonymous sources. Goldberg writes of the morning Trump was scheduled to visit an American cemetery near Paris, where American Marines are buried. This is a piece of the article. In a conversation with senior staff members on the morning of the scheduled visit, Trump said, quote, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." In a separate conversation on the same trip, Trump referred to more than 1,800 Marines who lost their lives at Belleau Wood as, quote, suckers for getting killed. Earlier today, Goldberg responded to the pushback from the president and several of the president's aides.
I stand by my reporting. I have multiple sources telling me this is what happened.
Here's what Kelly told The Atlantic magazine about a White House conversation after Trump told Kelly he wished he'd be more like German generals. Kelly said, quote, "Do you mean the Kaiser's generals? Surely you can't mean Hitler's generals." And Trump said, yeah, Hitler's generals.
As a result of their failure to take that information and get it to the American people. So, I mean, compare the apples and oranges here that we're actually talking about. Even if this reporter was right, and even if you had these leaks or any of these little things that happen, okay, yeah, human nature, you're going to have mistakes, whatever. But we need to keep in mind, zoom out and compare that to what the Biden administration and their intelligence community did or did not do while they were in charge, and be thankful for a snafu as small as this compared to what they had.
But they're going to jump on anything. And I think going back to Lance's comment, Pastor Hank, they're going to jump. This is the deep state. They're in panic. They're going to grab for anything. So most likely, just an opinion, somebody's assistant preloaded something that was connected like Lance said. Oh, yeah, here, just go. I'm sure that's not going to happen again. What do you think, Pastor Hank? We're looking at this snafu on Signal.
Well, listen, brilliant commentary from Lance and Rick. I think they nailed it. And so I don't have much to say in that regards, but I do know this regarding what you're saying about the deep state involvement. Listen, the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the deep in the book of Genesis. And what the deep state doesn't realize is they are dealing face to face with God himself. God is serious about his righteousness. He's serious about his justice. Genesis 7 even says that the fountain of the deep was broken up. And when God was dealing with Noah and the corruption. Well, the deep state has been part of a lot of corruption, and God, once again, like Genesis 7, he's busting it up. Also, I do believe this, Exodus 14, God is on purpose setting up traps. And to Rick's point, I think some of these traps are this. Listen, what about Hillary's email servers? Remember that discussion? Nobody really from the media really investigated that, and that was a breach of national security. How about the handshakes from the fake previous administration that was literally shaking hands, giving billions of dollars to our enemies? I think that's what the fake news needs to go back and look at, that they once again are trying to spin it and create stupid narratives, but the American people are smart enough to see exactly what they're trying to do.
And I love that, Lance. Hank, you're right. We are smarter this time around than we were
Yes,
coming into 2020 and 2017 when all that happened. We were going, what's going on with General Flynn? We got this. We got this. All right. So nothing, we talk about government grinding to a halt and moving slowly. But Lance, guess what? Overnight, we're able to have a congressional hearing about what happened yesterday. Watch this.
It is permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided, Senator, that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels. Right. So those were procedures that were implemented. My staff implemented those processes, followed those processes, complied with those processes, and finally, just please. So my communications, to be clear, in a signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information. Your question was, have I participated in any other group chats sharing classified information? To be clear, I haven't participated in any signal group messaging that relates to any classified information at all.
Okay. Director Gabbard?
Senator, I have the same answer. I have not participated in any signal group chat or any other chat on another app that contained any classified information.
All right, Lance, give me your thoughts. It seems pretty cut and dry. It is convenient, though, that all this breaks right before they already have a session set up to discuss. But aside from that, where do we go from here, Lance?
Well, what amazes me, though, is, and it's a bit of a conundrum to me, Gene, how you could have 4 district judges. That's we got 900 of them, I guess, presiding over 700 districts in state courts. They're the lowest level judge. And we've got them blocking Trump's agenda on the military with transgenders in service. We got him blocking his agenda on deporting illegals. They've got 4 different injunctions basically stopping. And we have not had, with the whole federal government literally under siege and potentially being shut down, we haven't had a meeting like this yet, where we've got these district judges sitting in front of a news panel or the media. I'm trying to understand, why is it that Republicans, with all the power they've got, can't convene media circuses like this? Why is it the moment, face it, an unpatriotic, stinking liberal journalist wants to expose personal conversation? If that man was a patriot, he'd say, whoa, whoa, guys, check out what you're doing. I shouldn't even be in this conversation. But he didn't do that. He said, gotcha, and I'm going to expose you and make America look weak. And nobody ever bothers to say what a jerk that journalist is on The Atlantic, the editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, for even being there.
That's right.
Peeping Tom that he is, spying in the conversation and then publishing it to the detriment of America's security.
So true. And by the way, Lance and I have been the fodder of The Atlantic already.
Well, that might be a little personal there.
It might be just perhaps a little personal for us.
Perhaps it's because Jeffrey has been less than flattering of us that I'm taking advantage of the opportunity.
But thank you for that segue, because I want to go to these judges. Watch what Senator Josh Hawley had to say last night. Watch.
I understand you have legislation in the works that could address some of the issues that are plaguing this administration coming out of what are activist courts and an activist agenda.
Absolutely. The key thing to do here, Laura, is to end the ability of these district courts to abuse their judicial authority by issuing these so-called nationwide injunctions. Laura, I don't think they have that authority, properly speaking, under the Constitution, Article 3. What they're doing is they're purporting, these judges, they're purporting to go out and to bind parties and individuals who aren't before them. They're purporting to bind people who aren't in their district. We only have one Supreme Court that can bind the whole nation. District courts aren't supposed to be able to do it, and yet President Trump has been subject already to 15 separate so-called nationwide injunctions. In his first term, Laura, there were 64. We have never seen anything like this in American history. It's incredibly abusive, and Congress ought to end it. And we can end it by just saying no nationwide injunctions by these district courts.
All right, so lawfare again, Rick. Here we go. I'm so glad that Josh Hawley brought that up. 64 in his last administration, and here we are. We're already at 15. What's the answer to get this stopped?
Well, I appreciate the fact that we have a great ecclesia here in the Flashpoint Army because they've been through biblical civics. They know that this judicial supremacy is the problem. So when you think of the Supreme Court as being supreme, then you'll go to these district judges and ask them to be supreme. So I'm going to disagree with Hawley only in this. I think even the Supreme Court should not be able to bind the whole nation. That's the job of Congress and the president. The Supreme Court should apply what the Congress and the president does to the facts before them, even in their cases. But all of that to say, the answer to your question is the American people have to become civically literate to know the court does not have the final say. Don't go to the court to solve all of your problems. And then the president just has to keep doing what he's doing. He's got to keep saying no to these judges. He's got to get it appealed to the Supreme Court because that's where everybody's going for the answers, even though they shouldn't, as I said. And I believe he's going to win these cases. He's won most of them. He's gotten not really a loss so far. What they've done so far is they've given it back to the district judge. They haven't granted his injunctions that he's asked for. But on these big questions, I believe the Supreme Court is going to end up siding with us. Back to our conversation last night on things like the enumeration, the census, and challenging those things, on the lawfare that's been taking place with regard to how much the deep state should have the power to do. We've already won on Chevron deference and so many of these big cases. So the answer to your question is President Trump, stay the course. Keep fighting this. And he's the only guy in the country that has the steadfastness to do what he's doing, to fight on all of these fronts. And it doesn't bother him one bit. He still comes to work with joy. He's still got a bounce in his step. He's still punching every chance that he's getting. Fight on every level. So they picked on the wrong guy here. So they're going to keep bringing it. We need to keep pushing back.
Let me show you a little bit of the clip. Maybe you didn't know all of this going on. Here's a little bit from Vox about the judges that are pushing back on Trump. Watch.
Frankly, there's the broader issue of all these judges' injunctions and then decisions like Judge Boasberg, what he's trying to do and how that case is working. We're going to have hearings on all of that because particularly when you look at Judge Boasberg, it starts to look like this is getting totally political from this guy, particularly when you remember he's also the judge who was part of the whole Trump-Russia FISA court, granting those warrants that allowed the Comey FBI to spy on President Trump's campaign. So we're going to look at that issue as well, but hopefully we can get that bill passed next week on the House floor, move it to the Senate, hopefully get it to the president's desk.
All right, Lance, when I look at this, this is why we did not add extra guests tonight, because we really need to spend a little bit of time here and understand what we're dealing with here. If you do not understand what we're seeing here with the judges, with this signal snafu with Hegseth, all of these things, they're trying the same game plan, Lance, that we're seeing this over and over again. Now, my question to you is, isn't it interesting, these Obama-era judges, most of them I think were Obama-era, they're following political lines here. They must be getting pressure from the deep state. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense, because some of this stuff just is crazy.
They're not getting pressure from the deep state. They're willing participants. These are activist judges. You look at their track record. You look at their history. You look at their affiliation, their political affiliations. They even have family members that are in some way making money off of affiliation with the left wing. So the way the left approaches this, and this is it's the oddity about us. Churches, we all know, we love each other, but churches in a community don't work together. Conservative groups, for the most part, are not collectives. They don't like working like communists, working as a group. They like individuality. But this is where the left, unfortunately, we have to understand how they operate. The journalists at the Atlantic, the district judges that are out there, they're all one hive mind. And if you don't mind me saying so, there's a spirit that is on them that animates and insinuates and say, why do you think we have Tesla stock dropped down to 1/2 for a man who isn't even taking a paycheck to expose corruption, valid corruption, and we have a whole group of activists fighting him? Why? His showrooms. Why is that? Because America is still in a civil war that we have gained by prayer, the powerful high place of government. But we must now sustain by vigilant prayer, intercession, and wise activism a pushback on the spirit of lawlessness, because that spirit still has control of a strong apparatus, Gene.
All right, Pastor Hank, hear him talk, Lance, talking about a spirit of lawlessness. Speak to that.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think to Lance and Rick's point, we have a job as American patriots, people, the ecclesia, the church, and it's really found in Luke 18, and it's when there was an unjust judge or there was injustice coming through the judges. The widow was persistent. She didn't quit. She didn't, remain silent. She kept pressing and pressing and pressing to the point where shall not, God speaking, the Lord of the earth, avenge us speedily from injustice. That's really what that's about. And I think if we do our role, we do our part, we're going to see this. But also, Jesus said, will the Son of Man find faith when he returns? Well, what kind of faith? Faith that stands for and against injustice. It's not just faith for your clothes, your shoes, faith for your country, faith for your city, faith for the things that the enemy is trying to do, to Lance's point, through demons of darkness to bring injustice. But I want to say this last thing, Gene. On Sunday, the Spirit of God spoke, and he said there was a day in the earth where the judges ruled the land. And he's saying we're seeing the same scenario play out in our country, but the Lord said, I have come to judge the judges and to bring my righteousness and my justice. And they may try to turn this thing up 7 times hotter like in the days of Daniel in his lion's den. It's all going to turn on them. And God is stepping in. And look to the month of April. It is a key shifting month that we're going to begin to see the justice of God. And these people are setting themselves up, like we're discussing, in a trap that is set by God himself.
Well, it's sure obvious now to those of us paying attention. Tom Fenton, our friend from Judicial Watch, says this: judicial coup in a disturbing decision. Chief Judge Boasberg suggested he has the power to second-guess the president on core matters of foreign policy, defense, and immigration.
So I think we need to press the gas on this thing. I think impeachment of this judge should be done. I know Justice Roberts has already, done his high and mighty. Oh, no. We in the courts will deal with that. It just needs to be appealed to us. Impeachment's not the proper place to do that. No, you're wrong, Justice Roberts. Impeachment is exactly the proper place to do that. That's exactly what Hamilton meant when he said that impeachment is a bridle in the hands of the legislature. This is how you rein in an out-of-control public servant like a judge or someone in the other branches. So I say impeach a bunch of these judges, and they will, the rest of the judges will stop getting out of their jurisdiction into the jurisdiction of the lawmaking body or the executive branch.
Well, and Lance,
hey, Gene, real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Gene, real quick. I wanted to follow with that prophecy from Sunday very quickly. The Lord said that's what's going to happen. There's going to come impeachment of these judges and a resetting of the judicial system. It's God's justice. That's why judges are in the news right now and under the watch of God.
Well, I would certainly agree with that. All right, but my point I was going to make, Lance, is this. It's not just they're attacking Trump. They're attacking Hegseth and all. They're picking them off, trying to pick them off. We're not going to let that happen. But now when you go to this Judge Lee Rosenthal thing with Texas A&M, they're still coming after us. They're still coming after conservatives. Imagine if you were conservative and you sent your kid to school going, great, Trump's in. I don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. Sanity has returned to the court system and the presidency, so we're going to have it's okay. And then this happens. This shows, just this by itself shows you, Lance, that this is not, the fight is not over. We can't just sit back and rest on it because we've still got a lot. They're still coming after our conservative values.
Yeah, let's be really clear about this. Trump didn't even get his 100 days in. They are desperate to stop him. Their strategy now is a judicial coup. By the way, the Justice Roberts' comment on speaking to the Trump talking about impeachment and trying to cool his wheels on that, without making another comment attached to it, which is, and the court is not the proper vehicle for political resolution, and the court must be careful not to. He didn't add that part, which is, the judges have to be careful about overreach, and the politicians have to be. My challenge with I want to see that prophecy Hank said fulfilled. Sometimes I give prophets credit for getting it right, but they're not in the weeds like we are. We're the bean counters in these processes. It's very difficult, actually, to impeach a judge. The proper power of setting the limits of the jurisdiction of a backup, we have got to realize that if you want to save America, we've got less than a year and a half or so to mobilize to protect Congress from becoming the entity that will conduct special counsel's investigations on presidential overreach. I could prophesy that. They will attempt to impeach Trump. And they're going to use this tactic right now of his overreach, of his dangerous excesses. And what I'm trying to say is that Congress, we have to take it. It's not typical that this happens during a midterm. We have to expand the margin of representative government, and we have to be engaged with that government so that they're supporting Trump. They have the power to restrain those lower court judges. They can they can even change, if I'm not mistaken, Rick, they could take that disastrous District of Columbia, D.C. court system that they ramrodded Bannon and Navarro through and wanted to put Trump in. We could take it and we determine where those district courts are. They're the center of power. And if we really took ourselves seriously as a movement, we would go for that leverage, that God-given power in the House, and we'd start to restrain the judges, but we must seize more territory.
Go ahead, Rick, your thoughts.
Amen. Oh, man, so many things. First, everything Lance just said, 100% right. I got to say something about A&M real quick. I'm hoping that my friend Glenn Hager, who's been appointed to be chancellor there, is going to change that nonsense and stop that from happening. But you guys are exactly right. And that's why it's not just the president. It's not just Congress. It's our communities. It's where we send our kids to school. Defund the left by defunding the universities. Do not send your kids to these universities that you think are conservative and they're no longer conservative. Send them to Patriot Academy. Give me a year with them. I'll send you back a leader, and maybe they'll go to college, maybe not. Okay, back to Lance's point. He's exactly right. Article 3 empowers Congress. They can abolish these courts. You don't even have to move that district court. You can abolish it. It's like Steve King said years ago, the Constitution, constitutionally, Congress can reduce the entire federal judiciary to nothing more than Chief Justice John Roberts sitting at a card table with a candle. In other words, the Congress decides how many judges there'll be, where these district courts will be, how many judges there'll be in the appellate courts, all of that. They have the power to do it. They need to use the power they've been given. This goes back to what Lance said at the beginning of the program. Too often Republicans are timid. They don't use the power that the American people have given them. They need to do this with the courts. They need to do it with the enumeration. In fact, if they don't do the enumeration, if they don't fix the enumeration to be constitutional, instead of the census going off the rock, counting illegals, all the stuff they did to manipulate what's currently in Congress. If they don't do that, we're going to lose 2026. They need to come back in, fix the enumeration, don't count illegals. You're going to end up with probably 20 more red state representations in Congress. And this is everything Lance said, man, it's spot on. Use the power we've been given instead of being wimpy about this. I guarantee you the Democrats would do it if they were the ones that had the opportunity to do it right now.
That's right. All right, we got to use the power. I still like that.
Where's He-Man? I have the power. Yes.
Justice Roberts with a card table and a candle. It's a great visual.
That's a good one.
All right, we'll take a break. We come back.
But let's make it justice.
This minute 6 clip on the Dems. They're going from bad to worse. Watch.
MoveOn.org says it's time to move on from Schumer. They say their frustrations are at a boiling point, and if nothing changes, donors are ready to yank their funds out. Schumer can smell the coup coming.
Leader Schumer, are you feeling pressure to step down?
Look, I'm not stepping down.
Now, look at that. That first chart there shows, starts at the bottom, 96 to 2020. Look what has happened with the blue line. They're not trying to. Remember when everybody used to say, let's reach across the aisle, and we were more concerned about the people in the middle? Look at the left. I mean, you can't get much more of a left turn than that. Lance, What's going on?
Well, just goes to show you, Gene, that if God can't make his people smarter, he'll just make his enemies dumber. So we haven't had the revival we're looking for, Gene. We keep praying. Want to remind you, the books like The Harbinger and all the people that were talking to us for years said, without a revival, America will never get saved. We need a Christian leader. Well, God gave us a controversial leader with Trump, and he didn't give us a revival. He gave us a reformation. Now, the revival still has to kick in. It's a little here and there, pockets here and there in college campuses. But for the most part, the Lord is making our enemies dumber. I mean, this is really one heartening piece of information. They're doubling. You saw the 30,000 people that came out for Ocasio and Bernie. Now, if that's the crowd gathering, then that tells you the momentum is on the side of going into a ditch, which means that God's being merciful to us. America never bought the trans agenda. It never bought into multiple genders. Men really never bought into the fact that alpha masculinity was evil. We never really bought into open borders, defunding the police, or infinite spending. So what the left has done is they captured the institutional high places. The coastal elites have great power, but they never took the American people with them. God sent Trump. He captured the American populist movement, and I'm grateful to see that they still haven't figured out how to talk to that audience. Gavin Newsom's doing it. That's the guy you got to keep an eye on. He's talking to Charlie Kirk. He's talking to Bannon. He realizes we better tack to the middle. Even if we don't believe it, we better go Clinton or we'll never be in office again.
Let me get Pastor Hank. You heard Lamb. What do you think? You agree?
Sure. Well, I think there's two components that are in operation. Number one, we've been saying it for 4 years when we stood alone, when everything looked like the opposite of what we were saying here. The God factor. God is involved in our country.
That's right.
And he is showing it, and he's going to continue. Second component, the Lord prophesied, was there would be another outrage that would come, like the Boston Tea Party back in our history in America. It would be called a righteous rebellion. Then he began to further say that we would be going towards what would be called the greats. America would be made great again. There would be great removals, great resets. That's why, listen to me, I'm telling you, judges will be removed. You're going to see it. God is serious about this. It's part of the great reset. And he also said that they would begin to turn on each other, the Democrats. And then, last, I want to ask a question, Gina. I won't take long. This is a question. Do we believe that the story of Exodus 14, when God allowed Pharaoh to be so prideful, like we're seeing from the deep state, these judges, different politicians and such that align themselves with that lunacy, do we really believe that that's just a story in Exodus 14? Or could it play out again that God is setting traps, ambushments, and that the saying in Exodus 14, this level of evil, this kind of injustice and stuff, the Egyptians you see today, you're not going to see again. God, when he decides to step in for a country with its deliverance at this level, I believe those things are playing out again.
I think you're right. I think they are playing out again. And I think we can go look at Saul. I mean, we've got the same thing. He turned from what he knew to be the truth. And look at what happened. He couldn't get it back. And, of course, then David and everything that happened after that. I want to show this real quick, because if you are sending your child or your grandchild to Columbia, get them out. I don't know what you're thinking. Get them out. Watch this.
Today, there was another demonstration at Columbia University. This time it wasn't the students. It was the professors leading the protest.
Educators furious the school gave in to Trump's demands after the president froze hundreds of millions of dollars of funding for the university, claiming it did not do enough to stop anti-Semitism on campus.
Now, Rick Green, I don't understand. We all should stop anti-Semitism. What happened to America? I'm trying to understand this radical left idea. And now we've got professors at supposedly a great university stand up going, no, we need to keep that. Basically, they're saying we need to keep anti-Semitism because it's our right. I mean, am I missing it, Rick?
Well, it's the same thing I said earlier about these moments in time where something so crazy happens. You got to seize that opportunity. And, you showed Charlie Kirk's tweet a few minutes ago. He had the great book just a couple of years ago about the scam of college and what these universities are doing. So let's seize this moment to wake up the parents, at least within our circle. Because, Gene, you still got a lot of good people that send their kids to these schools and good people that send their money to these schools. They'll leave in their wills. They'll leave great wealth to these wacko colleges that are undermining everything about America. It frustrates me so much. They've got to wake up, and this is the opportunity. Seeing this kind of thing at Columbia right here should wake people up to realize. And by the way, the last comment from Hank and the last comment from from Lance, you guys have to take those clips of what they just got through saying and make those some short reels that get out on social media. That is so much wisdom about what's going on right now. Not, Gene, that your comments weren't wise too.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Well, anyway,
thanks a lot.
So much. Anyway, they were so good that we've got to get that out there because I'm telling you, that is the answer to saving the whole thing.
Yeah, come on, Lance. I mean, we all want, there's this thing about education with Christians. Either we've been blindly following the path, well, forget your Christianity, just go to school and get an education, or we have traded that for the ultra-left liberal ideal. I mean, this is where we've got to wake up. What Rick's saying, I think, is absolutely true. Your thoughts?
Well, I've got two thoughts on it, Gene. That's why I did for 20 years, Gene. I did 7 mountains. Not like I didn't have other stuff to talk about, but I said if we don't focus on education, media, government, arts, entertainment, science and technology, the devil will seize those high places. That's right. And with a small number of people, if he can get the academic world with his radical goofball professors, the average American doesn't agree with these guys. They're anti-Semitic, they're anti-American, they're anti-capitalist, and they're paid. They're secure and they're resentful. They don't like the country they're in. They don't like the world. So if you send your child there to get educated by them, they will become twofold more child of hell, like Jesus warned, when you get proselytized. So the parents need to realize that. But here's the other side. I don't like surrendering high places. What we really need is to have stronger Christian conservative chapters on Columbia and courageous chapters. That's why I'm a big proponent of Leadership Academy and Turning Point. And
sure.
I'm putting funding as much as possible into building strong apostolic, evangelistic, conservative groups on campuses because I don't want the world to have those territories. We need those degree factories because I want to have our Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Columbia professionals that are the Daniels and Josephs and Jacobs and Isaacs of their generation. But man, if you don't go in there with the realization they'll be poisoned, you're sending your child into a destructive scenario.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Hey, Gene,
you know what I mean, Gene?
Yeah, I am. I'm right with you. I'm just ordering a pizza while you were. Anyway, go ahead, Rick, your thought.
No, I think Lance is exactly right. We have to raise up the Navy SEALs of civics, the Navy SEALs of education. In every one of these areas, we have to raise up the kids that can win over their generation. That's why these things are so important to do. But the opportunity before us is because of what Lance said earlier. The American people didn't buy these lies. They took the high places. They took those positions. But the American people are still with us. The Democrats haven't figured that out. That's why they keep swerving. That graph you showed, I was laughing because I thought they were already way over to the left. The fact they swerved even further left, as that blue line showed, than where they already were, tells you the opportunity before us is huge. We have to convince the American people to get more involved in what's going on. But George Barna, I was just talking to George Barna earlier about this, and this small remnant that's out there, that 3% roughly, that still believes in the Bible, that still believes in the God of the Bible, that still believes that they need to be disciples of Christ and it should apply to everything in our life, that's the leadership that we have to train up. Those are the people that we have to get through biblical civics, get them to send their kids to these schools and be in those chapters, but also send them to Patriot Academy first to get them prepared to go to those kind of places. The 3% is there, and they are the ones that then have to convince the rest of the people. So Lance set the table right. The opportunity's before us, but now we have to go gain that ground back. That's why being part of the Flashpoint Army is so critical in this season. He's raised up all of these people like Lance and Hank and you and Tony and all the other people that are part of Flash. He's raised all of this up for such a time as this. Now let's go seize that ground, man. This is a wonderful time to be alive, to be a part of this. is.
And I agree with you, because here go to the next, take it to the next level and actually get some stuff done.
That's right.
Because this is what the American, listen, let me show you this clip. You know, we're going to kind of get a little altitude here. This is ESPN. Maybe you saw this. This is when President Trump decided to attend a wrestling event. Watch. Now, folks, he's not running for anything. He can't be president again. Yet it looks like a rally. The people there just absolutely going crazy for what they believe is the right guy in the right place at the right time. I mean, Pastor Hank, I mean, that it just makes you smile. Let me show you this before you comment, because I know you got to comment. Luca Tanner approached Air Force Lieutenant Wyatt Hendrickson. I'm going to show this clip. Honors President Trump with a salute following his national championship win. Look at this. This will make you laugh.
To cheer and chant. And I want to say this. I know we're talking about a lot of serious issues, and I know, listen, I take the hits for the things I prophesy. But I want to tell you something. A lot of the people that hit me never come back and apologize for the things that the Lord said that very few were saying in a time where the opposite looked like it was happening. And what God said came to pass. And here's what I've been saying. We're in a time of the God factor. We're in a time now where Judges 5:2, where you get brave leaders, the people willingly follow. And I believe it is the very components that is going to shift this country and ultimately the earth for the divine reset that God has been speaking. And it's all part of His glory coming with reformation, revival, awakening. But how about this? Renaissance. Something you've never seen before.
Yeah, amen. Lance, I saw that hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. When you looked at that crowd, there was in Philadelphia, too, I believe, which is really interesting because Philadelphia is a Democrat territory. But what does it tell you? Hank got me thinking while he was talking. If that was the Columbia University, what you're seeing is America's not being saved by the credentialed, intellectual, collegiate class. It's actually freaking out and having meltdowns. The people that are saving America are the common sense working men and women who actually pay the bills and deal with a real world, not gender pronoun conflicts. And so Trump is that audience there is the working class populist movement. And that's our strength. We have America as long as we stay on track.
Yeah. All right, Rick. We got like 6 minutes here left, so we'll start to wrap it up. I mean, on one hand, we see great things like what we just saw. I feel like I want to play that clip again. In fact, play that clip again. Let's watch Trump entering the arena again. If you got the one with the audio. Come on, Rick. You know you love it. You love that. I mean, they're chanting USA behind it. I mean, this is. I mean, it just makes you smile.
Well, in fact, it reminds me of the UFC fight when he walked in, and it was the fight when Johnny Bones Jones, defended his title and took the belt over to Trump. In fact, Hank's son John Kunneman trains with Jones, but it reminds me of that, and I just can't believe that you guys don't think that Tim Waltz with his beta male walking would have gotten the same. Wouldn't he have gotten the same cheers at a UFC or wrestling? No, probably not. No, look, Trump is the man for exactly this time, for exactly this moment, just like you said. And I think Lance is onto something here with the fact that the populism is there. We've got the American people with Trump and with our movement right now. So now is the time to go deeper with that and teach them why they want Trump. See, right now, a lot of those people are just responding to the pain of what Biden and Harris caused for the nation. They don't necessarily understand the economics or the policy or the biblical worldview and all of that. So now's our chance, while they're with us, to take them deeper, explain why they want these policies that we have. So it's a great opportunity to educate. That's why it all ties together. Getting rid of the Department of Education, getting it back to the states, getting competition in education, getting people to come to a biblical civics class, studying these things and learning this. It all fits together, and the timing is exactly right. And, Hank, I love the word you just used, renaissance. Not just revival and reformation, but renaissance. I think that's good. That's going to be our word for the next year, I think.
I got to show this clip. I've been trying to get to it for the last 2 nights. This is Governor Ron DeSantis trying to give money. He's been trying to give $900 million back. Watch.
During the Biden administration, we rejected federal funds on a variety of things because they had strings attached. So some of the road funding, we had to do all the DEI and woke policies, which are totally contrary to our state's policy. We had kind of led the fight against that stuff. Now it's more fashionable to be against it. When we were doing it, we were kind of having an uphill battle. So we did it, and we told the Department of Transportation and the Biden administration, here's $350 million or however much it is. We're not using it, and they're like, we don't know how to take it back. They literally did not know how to take back the money. Same thing on refugee money to send back, I believe, to HHS. They didn't do. So I'm like sitting on almost $900 million. We're not going to accept it because we're not going to change our behavior. So let's send it back and be part of the DOGE efforts. So we went up and met with Elon on Friday in Washington, and he had one of his lieutenants there. And they were just like, you want to give back money? Like, yeah, we'll accept it. They got on the phone to Treasury, and like within like 30 minutes, we had a plan to do it. And so we have initiated that.
Now, Lance, that says everything. They don't know. Money going back the other direction is well, wait a minute. You want to give back money? We've never done that before. What are we doing? Wrap it up, Lance.
Well, no, but I think we're burying the lead here. The real story is the way the left runs the government. If they want to propagandize you with diversity, equity, inclusion, transgender, racism, then we will give you 300 million.
Of about 400 meters. It is a speed limit enforcement of 100 kilometers ahead of about 200 meters. It has been processed normally.